You might be familiar with the story from the Gospel of John about Jesus being with his friends, Mary and Martha and Lazarus. They were siblings. They were really close, like good friends. Lazarus wasn't just a name in a crowd. It was a person who was like a best buddy, right, of Jesus. And in the story, word got to him that Lazarus was sick, like on his deathbed. And by the time that Jesus finally gets around to showing up, Lazarus had already died. So he shows up, and I think it even says in the story, like he wasn't just like freshly dead, he was like stinky dead, right? And when he gets there, Mary and Martha are just wrecked. You know, they're grieving hard. And they're confused and they're angry. Each of them says something, some version of like, Jesus, if you had been here, this wouldn't have happened. And here's what's interesting in this story. Jesus, the Jesus of the Bible, not the mascot to power, Jesus doesn't correct them when they say, if you were here, this wouldn't have happened. He doesn't try to explain it away or offer a sort of tidy theological lesson about God's plan. Or like God needed another angel in heaven. That nonsense. What he does is he weeps. He just stops and he cries. Right there in the middle of the sorrow, surrounded by their pain, he lets himself feel it. It's the shortest verse in the entire Bible. And one of my favorites. Jesus wept. Now, Jesus in the story, he knows that the story isn't over. As the account goes, that he actually brings his friend back to life. So whatever you believe about that is fine. But even knowing that was coming, he still chooses to stop and to grieve and to weep. He doesn't skip the part where it hurts, where it just sucks. And that is something to pay attention to, I think. Because if Jesus, who I tend to think is like the embodiment of divine love, if Jesus doesn't bypass grief, then maybe I don't have to either. Maybe I don't need to bury my head in the sand. I think that maybe a part of following the example of this man is letting myself feel it deeply, to sit in it when it hurts, to sit in the ache with people instead of reaching for an explanation, to let love be as raw as it needs to be before it tries to be helpful. Jesus doesn't bypass grief. He doesn't say everything happens for a reason. He says, this hurts. Let's hurt together.